We're going to call the meeting to order. First, we're going to establish a quorum. Mr. Silas Amor here, Adrian Pena, and Jennifer Varela, and myself. We have Algonina, Maggie Perez, and Lita Monapsis today. An announcement that this meeting of the Alice Independent School District has been duly called, and a notice that of this meeting has been posted in accordance to the Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.043 of the Texas Government Code. Now, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, a pledge to the flag, the Texas flag, and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to you, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Next, public comments. Do anybody sign up? So we have nobody signed up. Number 5, discuss a potential bond project, stadium. Dr. June.
Good evening, members of the board, members of the audience, and those watching on YouTube. So this is our second workshop as we prepare to evaluate the district's position in possibly ordering an election before February the 16th regarding the stadium. Just an overview, we had a workshop a few weeks ago regarding 3 different proposal sites for the stadium. And after that meeting, you all asked us for specifics. So we want to give you that information. You asked for a breakdown of cost by item line. You asked to see what the savings would be with parking, restrooms, press box, and turf. The cost to relocate transportation complex, the bandaged approach, if we only did the bandaged approach, the timeline and the longevity of that. And so administration did as requested. We did meet with the city of Alice to evaluate the codes as far as for parking, restrooms, and anything else that was coming up based on their information. So when they came to talk to administration, they shared that they owned 65 to 8 square feet of, I guess, easement and, the right of way. So because they own that right of way, then we kind of asked, what is the position that the city would take to help us as far as so we can use that additional piece of property for usage. So I spoke to Mr. Espasa today, and he said that he was very comfortable in me sharing that it is comfortable for us to use, or I guess, to use the property, and that it was very much in favor. He doesn't feel like it would be a problem in us looking at that piece of property as possibly leasing it for like 100 years for a small amount every year. Because that piece of property runs from Houston to, is it Saint? And so in case they ever were going to build a road, but they said that they were very comfortable in me saying that we could use the property and that it shouldn't be a problem. So with that being said, I want to pass it over to David Iglesias with PBK so he can respond to all the questions that you had from our last workshop.
Thank you, Dr. Trevino. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Board President Dr. Trevino, and David Iglesias of PBK Sports. And I'm here to present the stadium concept in addition to our previous board workshop with some additional information. So So regarding the existing stadium seating in the high school, this is the existing site, this is the Google image. And so we're identifying all the areas where the existing stadium is located, the high school, and most importantly, pointing out some of the parking around the site that we could possibly utilize and take advantage of that is already existing there around the high school. So we identified those possible areas to be considered as parking that we would need to account for the stadium. So history about the stadium, the dedication of Alice Memorial Stadium was November 7th, 1947. So obviously there's some history with the stadium. The current seating capacity is 2,750 at home, 2,750 for visitors, and there's 1,000 in the end zone and approximately 336 for band. Currently, the concessions, there are a total of 8 windows between the two buildings, so 4 and 4 approximately. And so the current restrooms on the home site, there are only 2 toilets for men, 4 urinals, and 4 toilets for the women. That's on the home side. On the visiting side, there is 1 toilet for the men and 1 urinal, and then there's 2 toilets for the women. Ticketing, there's currently 4 ticket windows. The existing lighting is a 4-pole system, and the football field is a natural turf field, approximately 360 by 160. The soccer field is approximately 360 at 195. Pole vault, all the jumping events are on the stadium site. So discus, shot put are on the high school site. The press box is a conventional press box. And so it is a 2-story, and there is approximately 2,200 square feet. And then the existing parking, based on what we could count, is approximately 490, and 800 around the high school itself. So there's approximately 1,370 currently on the high school site and the stadium site. So back in October 2023, ICE conducted an assessment of the stadium. So we just kind of wanted to touch on this briefly. We weren't associated with the assessment, but we just wanted to point out some items based on the report as far as the age of the structure and some of the deficiencies and repairs that could possibly or would need to happen. And then in conclusion, it does recommend that, studies be made to possibly replace the stadium facility. There is also some information regarding some estimated costs to repair some of the items deficiencies, around 2.6 million. However, they do have a line item on there that it could easily increase to over 5 million. And so I believe that report is available to go into more detail. So we just wanted to touch on that briefly. So stadium concepts and the site studies, again, these are concepts. These are no way formal or, actual designs. It's just an exercise to see what the possibilities are, what options can fit on the site, and then also to try to obtain square footages, quantities, and so forth to establish some budget numbers. Okay. Also, the budget numbers are not bids. They're based on past projects, recently bid projects of similar scale, similar scope within the region, San Antonio, Corpus, RGB. So we're taking that into account. And we also factor in some inflation just to have as a buffer, some contingencies, some soft costs as well. So, regarding the stadium concept, these are the codes that we would have to abide by for a new stadium. So we have the 2012 International Building Code, 2012 International Energy Code, the plumbing code, electrical, mechanical, ADA standards, TAS requirements, standard bleacher codes, health and safety, life safety, local ordinances, and property and tech stuff we would have to abide by. So regarding the program for the new concept, so the program we have discussed with administration was approximately 5,800 total seats.
Mr. Iglesias, if I may, the first time that we met as a workshop, it was 6,000. It was going to be 4,200 and 2,000. And so we've reduced it. We cut it to 4,000 and 1,800. So it was going to be 4 and 2, and now Instead of 4,200, 4,000, and instead of 2,000 in the visitors, 1,800. Again, trying to make some cuts to save.
Which currently right now, just to reiterate, it's 2,700 at home currently. Regarding concessions, typically you like to assign about 400 spectators, account for 400 spectators per point of sale. So in this case, we're looking at a home site of approximately 10 windows for concession, and visitors approximately 5 windows, and that's based on the seat count of the concept. There isn't really a need to have a ticket window, being that all tickets are now e-ticket, so it'll all be virtual. Press box, ground level, you'll have about 400 square feet, and game day, this would be for a conventional press box, approximately 2,800 square feet. And then sports lighting, LED, 50-foot candles minimum, that's required by UIL, four-pole system. So these are kind of the basis of the program that we established the concepts. So again, here, this is just a sample concept of Fieldhouse, football locker room, showing home and visitors. And again, this was just something that we wanted to show to kind of get an idea of square footage for budgeting purposes. So in no way is this a final design. It's just a concept of showing, some layouts. This could be further refined. Square footages could be refined as well, but we just wanted to show a possibility of what that could look like. Again, same thing for a press box. This would be for a conventional press box, 2,800 square feet. So the 2,800 square feet, I do want to point out, does not include this multi-purpose, which is approximately 400 square feet. So if that was going to be requested, that would be in addition to the 2,800. So, and again, this is just a concept of, of what it could possibly be. This is a project in Huntsville that was recently completed in the summer of 2023. So we just wanted to show an example of the bleacher seating. So you can see the 2-level seating. There's a concourse right along here. So you have a lower level. This is the main walkway, and that's where the ADA seating is. And then you have your upper deck as well. So it's 2 levels, right? So it gives a better vantage point and view of the playing field. And so people are walking on the front, they're not obstructing the view of where it's currently located. So we just wanted to show that as an example of what the bleachers could possibly look like. Some added program elements, the track events, all jumping events are factored, pole vault, discus shot put, a new 8-lane track, which would be international style, world athletic style, which is a longer radius and wider to allow for a wider soccer field, synthetic turf field. The football field approximately 360 by 160 with a soccer field of 330 by 210, which is wider than what we currently have. And then again, bus parking that would be required for the home and visiting team and band, etc. So these are some examples of the different size tracks. Alice Memorial Stadium, you can see there, number 2, currently 440 yards with a radius of 115. And then you can see the World Athletic tracks, which have a longer radius, a little bit wider, so it allows for a wider soccer field. You can see an example here. These are Google Earth images, so I apologize for the clarity, but we were just using them for reference to be able to show an example. And you can see Pier Creek as far as the radius and how wide that is compared to what Alice currently has, and then Corpus Christi. So we did want to touch on the synthetic turf, some of the pros and cons versus natural. So synthetic turf, as far as pros, very safe and playable when it's properly maintained. It requires little maintenance versus natural fields. They just need some brushing every now and then. Does not require skilled maintenance personnel. It's versatile and good for high usage. So there's no downtime. There's no recovery for a natural grass field. It can be one event after another. And then drought and wet conditions have minimal impact. So, it's designed properly, it'll drain properly after a rain, depending on, the rain event, and should be able to allow play within, a couple hours, depending on the rain event. And there's no downtime for a wet field, dry time, to delay game, etc. Hopefully not delay games. So One of the cons, synthetic turf field, is the initial cost. It is a higher initial cost upfront. And then one of the items is the playing surface on sunny days can get hot. But because of that, there are some cooling infill systems available now to reduce those temperatures. And so that can range between 5 to 10 degrees, which makes a difference on a hot summer day. Natural turf. So when to consider natural turf, consider synthetic over natural turf. The high usage, obviously the required maximum amount of usage for a natural turf field would be about 15 hours a week. And then also, you know, there's issues possibly with irrigation, water restrictions, severe, you know, environmental conditions, droughts, heavy rains, etc., that could impact the field. And so therefore play cannot be done because it could damage the field. The inability to adequately maintain a natural turf field. And then also there's maintenance costs associated with a natural turf field. And so some of those maintenance costs currently that the district spends to maintain their existing field are identified here. So approximately with all the seeding, irrigation, aeration, pesticides, and so forth, a grand total of 150,000. That would be per year. So just something to consider with the natural turf field. So the plumbing fixture count. So as per the current plumbing codes, we would have to abide by the plumbing fixture count, which based on the home site seating of 4,000, we would need approximately 25 toilets for the men and 46 for the women. So currently we have 6 for the men and we have 4 for the women on the home side. On the visitor side, 1,800 seats, we would need approximately 12 water closets for the men and 23 for the female, which approximately we have 2 and 2. Just for reference. We did have discussions.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We did have discussions with the city of Alice about that concern with the plumbing count and with like all our projects, you know, for stadiums, the seating capacity does push up the plumbing fixture count. So in some cases they allow for a variance. So we did talk to the city initially, and there was some verbal discussion of possibly reducing that by 30%. So reducing the plumbing fixture count would reduce the overall square footage of the restroom buildings as well. And so we factored, you know, that in as far as the adjusted square footage if we were to reduce 30%. Understand that's just verbal discussion. That would need to be further developed and solidified with the city. But our budget code, our budget numbers currently account for that reduction. And also the same thing would be variance for a reduction of the parking ratio. So currently 4 to 1, if we were to utilize 4 to 1, we would need approximately 1,450 parking spaces. So we could possibly reduce that further with the reduction. So site number 1, stadium concept. This was a concept that we had presented initially at the board workshop a couple weeks ago. Again, this is just a concept. So just touching back on the existing site, showing the current location of Alice Memorial Stadium, as well as the high school. So as Dr. Trevino had mentioned, when we met with the city after the last board workshop, they identified this area here that's hatched in blue is a right-of-way easement. It's approximately 60 to 80 feet. We're still not sure, we need to clarify. But it runs right along the west side of the stadium property. So something that we would need to account for, whether we cannot build over it or whether we would be able to build over it. So, so currently our concept A, we're showing as if we were building over that easement. And so the new stadium showing the 4,000 home seats, 1,800 visitors, new conventional press box, new restrooms, new stadium with an athletic field house. Also, this concept would impact the current location of transportation. So transportation would have to be relocated. So we visited that to show a concept where we could relocate it and also budget numbers that would be associated for that relocation of transportation. So here, overall parking, we have 880 existing and proposed new parking around the stadium site, approximately 620. Now, I do want to touch on the throwing events and the jumping events. We are showing them over here in the practice field. We show them there just to place them. They don't necessarily have to be there. Ideally, we would prefer to have them somewhere around the site. So it's also going to be contingent on this wedge here, whether we could develop that, maybe place some of them there or over here in this corner as well. So I just wanted to, that's not permanent. I don't want anybody to freak out because we're showing them there on the practice field. So this is a concept 1C. So we were asked to look at this concept. This would be to keep the existing track and field and pretty much demolish the bleachers and all the infrastructure underneath, which would be the restrooms, locker room, concessions, etc. This would still impact relocating the transportation building. But obviously there'd be a savings on not having to build a new football field, or soccer field, and a new track. Scoreboard would remain in place. We do show, the easement that we would have to contend with, that we would need to further discuss with the city, as far as what impact that would have on the development. So we did provide some budget costs for that to show what the savings would be, not demolishing the existing track and field.
This is the package.
So this is the site regarding the transportation. So we looked at multiple sites. This property is available just to the west of Mary Garcia Elementary, approximately 4 acres, which is pretty much what transportation would need based on the number of buses that they currently have. This would be a building of approximately 3,500 square feet, propane fuel station, concrete paving because of the heavy bus load that we would have to comply with. So we did establish some budget costs for that. So regarding concept 1A, again, these are budget numbers. These are not bid numbers. These are just concept numbers based on previous projects, currently bid projects, similar scale and scope. So as you can see there, everything that would be included, the demolition of the existing stadium, the new construction, new parking, possible utilities that would be needed for the site, new conventional press box, as well as a new field house, some football equipment, field goals, some security fencing, dumpsters enclosures, a new track, international style track, some flag poles, and then to reuse the existing video scoreboard. So it would need to be removed temporarily, structure had to be rebuilt, and possibly reutilize the scoreboard that you currently have. So we do factor in some budget contingencies, some soft costs as well. And we did throw in line item H, which would be the relocation of transportation with the 4% inflation. So a grand total of approximately 48,602,761 for concept 1A. Now we were asked to look at some savings for this concept. So down below, we wanted to show what some cost savings would be if we were to do a natural turf field versus synthetic. So a new natural turf field would be approximately 825,000. So there would be a savings from the synthetic field of approximately 900,000. A prefabricated press box, so what we currently have is a conventional press box. So a prefabricated press box is pretty much built off-site. It's shipped, assembled, erected and assembled on site. So there's some savings there. And so prefabricated press box is approximately, based on the square footage, approximately 2.6 versus the conventional, which is approximately 5 million. So there's a savings of about 2.3 million between conventional press box and the prefabricated. And then we were also asked to look at some savings for the parking, utilizing asphalt versus concrete. So there is some savings there based on the number of parking spaces, 620, which is what we're counting here, new parking spaces, total of 3.4. So there's a savings difference between asphalt and concrete of 620,000. So I do want to point out that the 43.47 is accounting for the savings, but that number is also factoring in, the contingencies and soft costs. So it's also lowering those percentages because the values are lower. So the number would be the 43.4 if those savings are utilized.
So that 43, 71, you're already deducting all that other stuff.
Correct.
Gotcha.
We're deducting the values here and then factoring in what the difference would be for the 10% contingency, soft costs, and the inflation, of course, still accounting for the transportation relocation. So this was concept 1A. So concept 1C, this was the concept where the existing field and track were to remain. And so we show the same line item budgets. All we did was zero out some of the items that would not apply, just so you could see what that difference would be. So for example, the goalpost, there would be no cost there since they're already existing. The 8-lane international track and synthetic turf field, that would go to 0, which previously was 4.2. And then the scoreboard would remain in place. There would just be some possibly wiring associated with the new press box. Again, this is factoring the relocation of transportation, the inflation, the grand total cost, and then the savings. If we were to apply, obviously, natural turf, that savings wouldn't apply because the field would remain. It would just be the prefabricated press box and the asphalt parking versus concrete. So you can see the savings associated with that option, and that would reduce to the 37.8. Any questions so far? So let me know I'm going too fast. So site number 2, we initially presented site number 2, which we're referring to as the Flournoy site. So this is where the site is located. We do show some of the boundaries. Flournoy Road, FM 665, it's approximately 212 acres located next to the airport. So this is an overall site showing the development of the new stadium and possible detention that we would be required to have. Same program, this would be the same 4,000 home seats, 1,800 visitor seats, new conventional press box, new stadium, new concession, athletic field house. Also, considering the 30% reduction for the plumbing, which was reflected in the reduced square footage for the restrooms. In this case, we wouldn't be able to utilize any of the existing parking, so the parking goal would be approximately 1,000 is where we would want to be at for new parking spaces. So this is just a blow-up view of the site showing the entire stadium, the field events, the jumping events, the shot put, and so forth, the parking, access that would be required. And then the
Well,
budget.
we don't have a code per se, because Flournoy Park is not part of the city, it's part of the county. And because of that, they don't have a limit on the number of restrooms or parking.
Correct. So as per TA requirements, the district will be required to hire a third party to oversee, to be able to perform plan reviews and perform inspections to be sure it overall complies with the building codes. So something to consider, but it is not in the city property, it's county property, so we clarified that as well. So showing the budget numbers associated for this particular site. Same thing as I mentioned in the program. Really the only difference, some of the utilities, because it's a new site, so there is utilities nearby, but we would have to get them to the stadium, and so forth. The savings, again, this does not impact transportation, so that will not have to be relocated, so that cost is not included in this budget. So including the budget contingencies, the soft cost, total project cost, and inflation, we're at a grand total of 44.6. And then again, considering some possible savings with the natural turf field, a savings of approximately 900,000, the fabricated press box, 2.3 million, and then the parking, since there is more parking, it is a higher savings going from concrete to asphalt. In some areas, that would just be vehicle parking, bus parking would have to remain concrete, some of the main drives would have to remain concrete. But in implementing some of that savings, you're looking at approximately 38.9. So just a side-by-side comparison, we show all three of the budgets side by side, just so you could see the difference between the two. Concept one, just to summarize, grand total 48.6, possible savings 43.4. Concept 1C, which is to keep the existing football field and track, grand total 41.7, possible savings 37.8. And then the priority side, a grand total of 44.6, and the savings of possibly 38.9. A lot of information. Thank you very much.
I have a question quick.
Questions, yes?
Our seating will be decreased though, wouldn't it? By doing that, what we did, if we add up the home side with the end zone and the band to what we're gonna have new,
It would be a little bit,
like 100.
yeah, a little bit less.
Well, because we have 2760 right now in the home.
And the business. So we do have some
Right.
fill, but it's in the field. So
Well,
now-
I'm talking about the visitors, I mean, the home side, I mean, the visitor side will. But, the home side will decrease,
Currently, you have 20,000.
yes,
Yeah, now-
from 42 to 4,000, I mean, 4,200 to 4,000.
Yes, we did reduce that just to show as a budget.
Both sides are designed to be extended out, so if we want to.
In the future.
Well, I'm just saying, because currently, right now, we fill up the home side, the students, well, not that much, but band, and then we fill up some on the visitor side. On the, I guess, south side, right, so that, I mean,
Yeah, we're increasing it base right now, about 1,350 seats from what we currently have.
You're referring to the original concept, right?
well, not increasing though, because you had the band and the end zone in there. Right,
On the,
we'll be decreasing, not increasing. But I'm just about the seating, that's on the home side.
trying to find this.
2750 on side.
Yeah. And then 1,000 from the end zone. That's the kids, the
Student section.
student section, and then 336 for the band, which totals 4,900, I mean, 4,094. So, so now we only have 4,000 seating.
So ideally, you probably want us to keep 40.
I mean, we can definitely go back to the table, but it will impact the numbers.
Well, I think because we're saying about increasing the
No, you're
home
right.
side.
Because we also have people part-time sitting in Q and R on the visitors that are home.
Correct.
And we're not even accounting for them.
The student section doesn't get filled up, but you know, you never know now that everybody's on one side.
So is that something that you want us to go back to the table and put 4,200?
I would like to see it. I don't know if anybody else. I mean, I think that's what, you know, we're doing, you know, the home side, you know.
Yeah, we could. But, you know, back in the day, you know, like the girls used to sit on the opposite side, remember, like the, what do you call them back then?
The orange jacket.
Orange jacket, there you go. They were on the visitor side, that was their spot. And even the band, and the band was over there. And then we switched it, but at what time? That's the way it was set up.
Yeah.
But on the visitor side, actually, on the end, towards the end. And so, and we could go back to that too, also, or increase it. I mean, I don't have a problem. But what I'm saying, to the point, you know, increase it. We're not to decrease, capacity, but that's an option though. I mean, obviously to leave them on the other side. But, I mean, that's the best option, but
We're just
it
trying
is
to
an
cut.
option. Yeah.
But I don't have a problem.
I have a question. Do we know how old the track is?
You know, you just resurface it,
Right.
Resurface. They just
After that
resurfaced it,
hailstorm, we
Right, it was
resurfaced
just
and we
recent.
did the bottom and the surface,
Yeah.
top surface, so it's 2015, I guess, redone, completed.
So maybe 8 years ago.
And just recently done some patchwork. Within the last couple of years.
Just a straight number, adding the seating, it's about 95,000 to add the additional 200 seats. That doesn't include, the percentages for soft costs and so forth, that's just straight per seat.
Did we get a longevity statement on the middle one, the existing track and field to remain no work? I guess that's the one we're calling the Band-Aid, is that correct?
Yeah, it's kind of a hybrid, just utilizing the existing fields in the track. Obviously, demolishing the bleachers, that would impact.
It'll all be new.
Everything else around it be new.
Yeah, because we would still need to do the restrooms because they're underneath. We still have to do the field house because that's underneath. It's just a matter that the lights are not gonna be closer, they're gonna remain
We're
on the
gonna
side.
stay on the visitor side. That was part of the tour that
Mhm.
I never paid attention until y'all pointed that out, that you're in the shadows.
Right.
We are still including new lighting.
The new light on all, everything, new lighting.
Yeah, but on the visitor side, you're up front. So you're sitting behind the lights.
As far as relocating the transportation department, that's $9,397.
Yes.
On some of that figure.
That was gonna be my next question.
Just factoring site development, new building construction, new paving, concrete paving, which has to be the heavy duty paving because of the buses. The propane fueling station, and then retainage and detention that would be needed, for that site. So, this was building brand new. If there's another location where they can utilize an existing structure, and maybe just parking, there would be some savings there. We just wanted
We
to show.
already reduced the parking because initially when they showed us this earlier in the week, and I think 60 or 90 parking in the front. So we've tried to already cut as much as.
I know we checked with, Mary R, but we didn't check Hillcrest. It's just closer to school. To here,
Well, it was also the amount of space. I know we looked also at the DAEP, that particular site, but that one required, doing some demolition. So that was just increasing. It's more the concrete is what they were explaining to us, because it's a really, really heavy.
And there's a building too, so if there's an existing building that they could utilize instead of having to build new and then just focus on the parking. Of course, it's all concrete parking, so, and there are things to save, but this is just a glimpse of, for a brand new site, right? To build it brand new, the big picture of what it possibly costs. Yes, there could be savings.
And where would those savings be?
Like I said, if you don't build a new building for their offices and they utilize maybe an existing board wall or existing building, I'm just throwing stuff out there as far as options, then you don't have that construction cost to build a new facility. And then it's just more the parking.
But I think also where they're going to be taking care of the maintenance and the mechanics of the transportation, those we don't have in Mary R. We can save offices for the clerk or whatever, but not the actual pulling of the shop. We don't have that.
I do have a question. I know that PBK was involved in a bond at Fort Bend, which is right outside of Houston. And there's an article that just actually came out and went to the board. They passed a bond for $1.26 billion in May of 2023, so coming up on a year. I don't know why there was a delay in starting that project, but last week they got a report from PVK, I assume it's PVK, that they're 132.6 million in a shortfall because of the rising cost of inflation, materials, et cetera, which is, they're showing numbers like 15% material cost increases, freight costs are increasing by 20%, and labor costs have gone extremely high. So is 4% you think is an accurate number for what you're throwing in these numbers?
That's depends on the timeline, right? So going out in May, with a design ready, construction soon after and so forth. I mean, yes, we're anticipating, a lot of the work being done this year before we turn to the next year, right? So, but then if that's delayed, till November, et cetera, it's just gonna depend, right, at that time. And then the market as well. So, and it's hard to,
Well, I mean, I know it's hard to predict, but I have a big concern. I mean, we're not even close to Fort Bend, but I mean, that is a big,
right?
big increase.
I can't speak, I'm not involved directly.
Yeah, no, I
But,
understand.
but yeah, no, I understand. I mean, I'm not sure, the ins and outs of what that shortfall was and what,
I just think that maybe that 4% may actually be a little on the low side, just my
Yeah,
opinion.
no, I understand. We do have some other contingencies in place. We do have a 10% contingency that we're carrying, just, that's almost 3 million.
Okay.
Depending on the option, so
And that works as far as eating up some of that cost.
that's why we like to keep that contingency in there, just to help with unknowns, right? And then some of the soft costs too, we have 15%. They may not necessarily be 15%, maybe more like 10, so it just depends, what it ends up using. Some of these numbers, some may go decrease, some may increase, but we're hoping at the end of the day we stay where we need to be at the budget, right? That's the intent.
So, one other question in regards to the existing track and field to remain, we are not planning on trying to save the bleachers. We're saying demo the bleachers and start up. Okay, so there's no patchwork to this, none of that stuff. Okay. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. Okay.
My case concerning, which is a valid concern. Last year, we were like in a real increasing rate environment, as you know, we're not there anymore. If anything, we're kind of in a decreasing rate environment, stable, more stable now. So I can see how last year was like an off year, but, not typical. I can see where their costs were at. They were pretty low on it. Also. Right.
Any other questions for Mr. Iglesias?
On the concrete, on the transportation, the mind-boggling, 9 million. The amount of concrete that you're proposing to use, if we move it, how much
Yeah,
concrete
so,
is that compared to where we're at right now? Where it's at right now, the amount of concrete, the area needed. Are we increasing it twice as much as the size right
Not the
now?
area, it's the thickness because of the weight of the buses.
Well, both, but, so how much are we using now? And square footage wise, how much are we using right now at currently? And where we're moving, how big is it gonna be?
First, I'm not too sure.
Right, that's my question, is how much bigger,
But I
more
think
concrete?
when we built that road that to the baseball park, they told us, don't have your buses go through there because it's asphalt. If you want your buses going through there, you have to make it out of concrete, and it's the thickness of the concrete,
Absolutely.
because the buses are pretty heavy and they'll tear it up.
No, I don't have a problem, it has to be concrete, no problem with that, it's the size of it, how much concrete?
They did do an aerial view of the current site, and that's 4 acres, and that's why they felt very comfortable that it would fit perfectly here, because that's the same square footage, just long.
Right, but how much is concrete right now? It's not all concrete right now where we're at. It's some of it's asphalt.
It's mostly asphalt.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm saying is,
Right, but
do we
I think
need
it's the
that much
code.
concrete is what I'm saying? Maybe part of it is the entrance or the traffic is at, we need concrete there
There
for
would be,
sure.
there would be I see what you're saying, there would be a difference, right, concrete versus asphalt, but it's not gonna be the same number that we're reflecting in the budget, because this asphalt would have to be heavy duty asphalt. So there would be a cost savings, but it wouldn't be as much as the concepts we're showing between concrete and asphalt. I don't know if you're following.
Okay.
So, I mean, there would be some savings, yes. And we did, like Dr. Trevino mentioned, we kind of took an aerial of the existing site. We knew we needed approximately 4 acres, and so that's when we explored, to see if it would fit. And this was just, quick to see, what would work, if it could work, and what kind of.
Without having to put more cost in, causing demolition in other buildings. The site was like ready to go.
Available. And it's already district-owned property, so.
So I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but when we first came to the first workshop, it was up to 44 million. And then my ideal request was to see something that was what I would consider a total package, which would be the demolition, the new stadium, and then moving the transportation building and using what we could. So when I'm looking at your numbers, if we look at the stadium itself with what we have, that's a little over 29 million, then we add in the contingency, the soft costs, all of that, then we're at a little over 37 million. And then to move the transportation, that's a little over 9. So now I kind of feel like we're back to the same spot. And where could we look to reduce expenses for the transportation relocation, even though that was on my wish list to have a total package? I appreciate the savings options that you're giving us with the prefabricated press box and using the asphalt for visitors parking and keeping the natural turf. I think that's something that is reasonable for our community to consider. And that would bring us to the 43 million, I'm sorry. But as far as the transportation, is there anything that you could give us to make that relocation reasonable? Because I personally feel that that's unreasonable to move. It's going to cost us $9 million to move the buses to an existing property that we already own.
Right.
And I think that's where Mr. Zamora is going with where can we save? Is it because you did come back with something that was a total package, because that's what we requested, but now I just feel like $9 million is also a hard sell to move buses.
No, I understand. I mean, we can continue working with administration, look at an alternate site, look at alternative things, utilizing some existing facilities. I don't know what the district has available to try to reduce the cost. But I know where you're getting at. I mean,
Right.
9 million, that's a significant amount of money for a brand new transportation building, and all the, the support infrastructure that would be needed for it. I mean, you're talking about utilities, you're talking about drainage, all the stormwater detention that would be needed. So new construction is gonna have a cost impact. So yes, if there's elsewhere we can relocate it, to try to minimize that cost, we can absolutely look at that, and we can do a pricing exercise to see how much we could possibly save to bring that 9.3 down as much as possible.
So what if somebody were to say, why do we have to move that?
Just based on the concept of the stadium, it wouldn't fit. The stadium,
parking.
the parking,
No way.
the new bleachers, the support, the transportation building takes up
It's that big one.
all this.
Okay.
So
I just want to be clear, because we're here so people who are watching, somebody's gonna say, well, why do we have to move it? So I want you to tell us why we have to move it.
yes, it's impacting, and even if we were to keep the field on the track, and demolish the bleachers and everything else, it would still be an issue.
The field tells where the kid's gonna change.
And then that's the purpose of us building the new stadium, to provide better facilities for our community kids, more restrooms, full dressing rooms, right? I just want to be.
Because once you start demolishing, you have to meet code. So once you start, we're no longer grandfathered in from 1947.
Correct.
comply with ADA.
Correct.
So maybe thinking outside the box a little bit, I mean, the potential for a new transportation building is 9 million. I mean, let's face it, there's been a lot of oil field companies that have left town. Is there something out there that maybe has a pre-existing quote-unquote shop with parking area that is,
With the concrete and everything.
I mean,
I think Mr.
That's what
Hinojosa
I'm-
wanted,
that's what I'm,
I think Mr. Hinojosa wanted to share something.
yes, sir.
That's under, so myself and, Coach Jim Kubala, we've been kind of brainstorming in this because I know the amount of money is substantial, right? So Hillcrest was one of the places we went out there yesterday and we kind of assessed that location. And in order to implement and use some of the existing structures that are out there, for one, the pavilion. It's thick enough cement slab, the foundation's perfect. You can fabricate some sort of bay doors around there in order to utilize that and make some sort of entrance in order for our buses to have access, right? Parking, if y'all have an idea of Hillcrest and the location, off to the, right between the church and Hillcrest, there's that existing parking right there. I guess it used to be for teachers. That could be used for parking, and the structure is fine. I mean, it's solid there. So that's a lot.
So
So,
use the building for the offices or the school, right?
and with that being said, we were also talking about that you have a brand new portable building there. I say brand new, it's in it's great condition. That could be utilized for.
How many
For office
bays do
space.
y'all have now, Mike?
What's that, sir?
How many bays do y'all have right now currently? Three.
3 in a wash bay.
Would that be enough space?
Yes, sir.
That's actually something that we thought about. I mean, pretty, I mentioned it at one time, as an option possibly. I hadn't thought about Marriott, which I think Marriott's good until you hear 9 million, then it doesn't sound as good anymore. That's when you first brought it up right now, but yeah, I'm like you, I thought about maybe you guys in Hillcrest, that's what I was thinking.
And one of the other,
Maybe
like I
same
said, you have existing structures there that could accommodate that and minimize a lot, especially with parking. I understand it's expensive, but, Coach had a good one too, or what was the name of that? The old Prime Pack building. Got about 8, how many days? 18 days.
The old what? I'm sorry?
The old Prime Pack, they're one of the oil field companies there in that area. And
We would need to purchase that property,
Yes,
Is
but
that
definitely we can
uncommon?
entertain those.
no, not a commerce, it's
In front
something.
of Fesco, around the Fesco area.
Oh.
Around that
Oh,
corner.
off of Florian.
Yes,
I mean, it can't hurt.
and I mean, we're
Obviously, it's brand new,
brainstorming and
right?
kind of seeing the number on the transportation, and I get it, I certainly do, but also looking outside the box and seeing what we have in existing property in order to, like I said, accommodate that, transportation. And I think that, Hillcrest could definitely cut costs on where we're at right now. Thank
We
you.
would be willing to go look at those sites to assess and, provide some budget costs, as far as whatever it would take construction wise. Obviously purchasing, that would be something different, but we'd be willing to do that and to be sure to explore those options for our sites.
Do we have our own fueling station, Mike, there at the?
What's that, sir?
Our own fueling station?
Yes.
Yes, sir, it's a fueling station,
Above ground?
up, on top of the ground. It's just a metal bin contained with the tank. Yes, sir.
Any more questions
I mean, other than we need to look into.
to look at?
Those are my next steps, yeah. 4,200, seat capacity at the home and Hillcrest. And so, thank you, Mr. Iglesias, but before he steps down, when we did meet with the city, they did ask that we look at the muck as far as the possibility of putting the stadium out there. And so we went ahead and shared with the architects and for them to give us feedback and their analysis of that recommendation. So Mr. Iglesias, can you share that?
Yeah, so we received this from the city of Alice. They had reached out to Alice ISD about the possible property next to the existing auditorium. So I believe this is the north side of the existing auditorium. And to be able to utilize some of the existing parking that's already there and so forth. So they took the image of one of our concepts and placed it on there. So we didn't do that, that came from them, just so that we could see what that would look like. And looking at this site even further, there is areas of concern. One, the orientation of the stadium. Typically, it should be north and south, so east and west would work. So I don't know, turning that. But the biggest issue is this area here. It's a flood zone. There's a creek that runs through there. So any construction there would be a huge impact to that, which would trigger a lot of other things that would impact the overall cost. Not only that, but earthwork and everything that we're required to build, this up to where it would need to be out of the floodplain. And so currently where it's shown, it would obstruct the floodplain, so that would trigger a lot of things because we would have to allow for that water flow elsewhere. And then not only that, but the environmental that would be impacted for that if it's considered a wetlands area. So that was just our initial assessment looking at it. And again, the city provided this diagram just for reference. So
I didn't want for us not to share with you all because they did go to the trouble to put it together. It's just not situated right. It's going east-west instead of north-south, and just the entire complications of the location would not be something that we should be considering. And then I just want to close because as next steps, and y'all can still call me right after you ponder throughout the next few days on what you would like for us to consider before hopefully going up and calling for an election. But started looking at clippings from 1947 when Alice, the city of Alice, was dedicating this stadium, and the stadium cost $100,000 back in 1947, and I'm sure that was a lot of money at the time, but the community was so excited to be opening it up, to be hosting football games, and you can feel the energy in just reading those articles. So I'm hoping that people feel that energy too, because at the end of the day, the stadium is needed. That outcome is not going to change. There are major needs in that stadium, but we'll continue to get it better or as best as we can in order for you all and the voters to make the best informed decision. So again, it's the 4,200 and evaluating Hillcrest, correct?
Yes, sir. That was the next step, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The time 7:03 and meeting's adjourned.
Goodbye.